On a cold winter night in 1977, 48-year-old Teresita Basso was found brutally murdered in her Chicago apartment. Her body had been left naked under a burning mattress with a knife still embedded in her chest. The case quickly went cold with no suspects and no apparent motive, until months later when police received a chilling phone call. A local man claimed that his wife, who had worked with Teresita, began channeling messages from Teresita's ghost during trance-like states. During these eerie episodes, the woman would apparently speak in Teresita's voice, identifying her killer as a man named Alan Showery. Even more disturbingly, the alleged spirit named stolen items that were taken from her apartment, including specific pieces of jewelry that Showery had stolen from her. As absurd as it sounded, police followed these clues, and shockingly, they all checked out. Showery was arrested and eventually confessed, making this one of the most bizarre criminal cases in modern history. YouTuber Eugenia Cooney rose to fame in the early 2010s for her fashion and makeup videos, but over time, fans grew increasingly concerned over her visibly deteriorating health, with many suspecting a severe eating disorder. In many clips, she appears to be extremely thin, fragile, and shaking, with bones protruding beneath her skin, all while cheerfully discussing beauty routines. Viewers have pointed out moments where she seems disoriented or struggles to sit upright, yet continues streaming, sometimes for hours in front of thousands. As Eugenia's following grew, so did the concern that young and impressionable fans idolized her skeletal frame. In 2019, she entered treatment and appeared healthier upon returning, but over time her condition seemed to regress, sparking renewed accusations of glamorizing eating disorders to vulnerable audiences. YouTube and Twitch have faced mounting criticism for allowing Eugenia's content to remain accessible, despite the ongoing concerns about its potentially harmful influence. Virginia Giuffre became one of the most prominent victims of Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell when she fearlessly accused Epstein and Prince Andrew of repeatedly sexually assaulting her when she was a teenager in the early 2000s. But just today, the 41-year-old mother of three reportedly posted on Instagram claiming she only has 4 days to live after her car was struck by a school bus. Along with an image of her appearing badly bruised, Virginia wrote, "This year has been the worst start to a new year. I won't bore anyone with the details, but I think it's important to note that when a school bus driver comes at you driving 110 kilometers per hour, that no matter what your car is made of, it might as well be a tin can. I've gone into kidney renal failure and they've given me 4 days to live. I'm ready to go, just not until I see my babies one last time." The post has left people asking many questions, with some believing it to be a sick April Fool's joke or a cover-up for the fact that she was actually murdered. Lee Redmond held the world record for the longest fingernails at 28 feet in total length after growing them out for more than 30 years. She said she had to sleep in a special uncomfortable position and couldn't drive because of them. But she eventually lost them after she was ejected from the passenger seat in a 4-car pileup that resulted in serious injuries. For 60 years, an unknown figure dressed in black visited Edgar Allan Poe's grave on his birthday, January 19th. Starting in the 1930s, he would pour himself a glass of cognac and raise a toast in front of the grave, before leaving behind 3 roses and the unfinished bottle of cognac. The man never spoke and was never identified. In 1942, forest rangers discovered something disturbingly odd at a lake located high in the Himalayas. There were over 200 ancient skeletons with blunt force trauma to their skulls, but the strangest part was that they were from distinct populations that died about 1,000 years apart. Researchers say the lake may have served as a recurring death trap over the centuries, with many likely dying from sudden hailstorms, which explains the cracked skulls. Many of the skeletons can still be seen emerging from the thawing ice in the summer, some with their hair and flesh still intact. Known as the Elephant Man, Joseph Merrick suffered from awful deformities that horrified and fascinated Victorian society. Rejected by his family, the Englishman joined a circus and performed in a freak show to earn his living. Merrick's disfigurement likely caused excruciating pain throughout his life, as he had to sleep sitting up propped against his knees due to his 22-pound skull. He died in 1890 at the age of 27 when he attempted to sleep lying down like a normal person, resulting in a broken neck that led to his suffocation. In his later years, Nikola Tesla became obsessed with a particular white pigeon, claiming that he understood her and she understood him. He said he loved her like a person and received visions from her. When the pigeon died, he said that the light in his life had gone out, and he knew his life's work was finished the moment she died. In 2019, a man from the UK suffered a 9-day erection after crashing his moped. The injury had disrupted his blood flow, causing his wiener to remain engorged. Once at the ER, he was classified as having a grade 4 erection, the highest possible tally on the erection hardness score. Doctors had to drain the blood and surgically redirect the vessels before the man made a full recovery. 20-year-old Ukrainian OF model Maria Kovalchuk had been missing for 10 days until she was recently found severely injured and dumped on the side of the road in Dubai. She disappeared after telling her friends she was invited to a Dubai hotel party by two men who said they were representatives of the modeling business, and her loved ones became worried when she didn't return home on her scheduled flight 2 days later. Maria was initially thought to be dead when she was found laying on the side of the road with severe injuries including a broken spine and multiple broken limbs. She was rushed to the hospital and immediately required 4 surgeries to save her life. A police investigation revealed that she reportedly sustained the injuries after entering a restricted construction site by herself and falling from a height. However, Maria's family have disputed this account, believing that the construction site story is a cover-up for something darker. According to reports, the model currently can't speak but is expected to eventually recover. In 2000, 4-year-old Kian Hongyan survived being hit by a speeding truck driver but had to have both of her legs amputated. Sadly, due to her family's financial struggles, she couldn't be provided with prosthetics and instead had to improvise with half of a basketball. She became known as China's basketball girl, a symbol of resilience despite overwhelming odds. A few years later, her story went viral and she was offered free prosthetics by a hospital in Beijing when she turned 11. A pair of identical twins from Brazil would use their resemblance to impersonate each other and date as many women as possible, and then defend themselves from allegations that they were cheating on their girlfriends. They would even take turns having intercourse with the same women by routinely swapping with each other without the women knowing. After one of them got a woman pregnant and a DNA test was inconclusive when both twins refused to say who was the father, a judge ordered both of the twins to pay maintenance to the little girl. The judge said they were taking away from the girl's right to know who her real father was. On December 14, 2012, 6-year-old Jesse Lewis wrote "I love you" with his finger in the frost on his mom's car. Just hours later, he would be killed in the Sandy Hook school shooting, but died a hero. Before he was fatally shot, Jesse saved the lives of 9 of his classmates by yelling for them to run while the shooter reloaded. In 2004, French authorities found a fully functional movie theater deep in the Paris catacombs, complete with seating, projectors, and a full bar. When police returned a few days later, the entire setup was gone and a note was left reading, "Do not try to find us." Just last year, a woman with type 1 diabetes died after opting for slap therapy instead of taking her insulin. She apparently had a lifelong fear of needles and grew tired of pricking herself, so she went to an alternative healer who treated her with the traditional Chinese method of slap therapy, during which the patient slaps themselves in order to expel poisonous waste from the body. She died on the 4th day of treatment due to not taking her insulin, while the alternative healer received 10 years in prison. In 1966, a teenage boy was flying a kite in Brazil when he stumbled upon 2 dead bodies lying in the grass. Later identified as electronics technicians, the men were wearing matching formal suits, raincoats, and most bizarrely, homemade lead masks covering their eyes. One of them had a note in his pocket that read, "Be at the agreed place at 4:30. Take capsules after the effect. Protect metals. Await signal." There were no signs of violence, and no clear cause of death was ever determined. The capsules were never found, and toxicology reports proved inconclusive due to organ decomposition. The men had been seen acting nervous and paranoid in the days leading up to their deaths, while reportedly measuring distances in the hills and carrying around a notebook filled with strange codes and symbols. Their families later stated that the men had been obsessively studying obscure books on alchemy, spiritualism, and intense luminosity experiments. Their bizarre deaths remain a total mystery to this day. In 2016, California woman Sherry Papini suddenly vanished after going out for a jog, just as her husband and 2 little kids were losing hope. 3 weeks later, Sherry was miraculously found alive by the side of a highway. She was tied up with a bag over her head, had a broken nose, was badly emaciated, and covered in bruises. Sherry claimed that 2 Hispanic women had abducted and tortured her, but she was never able to see their faces. The local community quickly rallied behind her, even offering donations to aid in her recovery. But behind the scenes, law enforcement was skeptical of Sherry's claims. They eventually found DNA on her clothing that matched her ex-boyfriend James Reyes, who had no choice but to admit that the story was a complete hoax. Papini had faked a kidnapping, severely beat herself up, and lied to federal agents, all just to spend time with her ex-boyfriend without her family finding out. Her husband divorced her the day she was arrested, while she was sentenced to 18 months in prison in order to pay $300K to the state. While filming the 1972 film Napoleon and Samantha, 9-year-old Jodie Foster was mauled by a substitute lion on set. The big cat picked Foster up, shook her around like a rag doll, and only released her when its trainer yelled, "Drop it." Foster later said she was in shock and thought it was an earthquake as she watched the rest of the crew run away. The same lion had nearly mauled Bob Denver while filming an episode of Gilligan's Island years earlier, and shouldn't have been anywhere near a film studio afterwards. Foster still has scars on her stomach and back from the incident and has suffered from severe ailurophobia ever since. Almost immediately after being liberated from concentration camps, an estimated 14,500 Holocaust survivors died from refeeding syndrome, since their bodies couldn't process normal food after such prolonged starvation. During the back surgery of a Hawaiian man in 2006, the surgeon couldn't find the 2 titanium rods that were supposed to be implanted into the man's spine, so he decided to improvise by implanting the shaft of a screwdriver instead. The screwdriver eventually snapped, and the man died 2 years later following 3 more corrective back surgeries. The patient's family was eventually awarded $5.6 million in a malpractice lawsuit. In 1915, a strange illness called encephalitis lethargica broke out across the globe. Nicknamed the sleeping sickness, the disease attacked the patient's brains, leaving them frozen in a statue-like state, fully conscious but unable to move or speak. One of the most haunting aspects of this disease was its unpredictability. Some patients recovered quickly, never experiencing any long-term effects, while others went into a deep coma and never woke up. Then there were patients who seemed completely recovered, until years later when the illness came back and suddenly turned them catatonic. At least 500,000 people died from the terrifying disease before it vanished without explanation 10 years later, just as suddenly as it appeared. While many theories have been put forth over the last century, epidemiologists still remain haunted by the mysterious sickness and its unknown origins. Some say it never left, but still lingers in the shadows, waiting for the right moment to strike again. When Jim Morrison died in France at the age of 27, no autopsy was performed as it was not required by French law. The official cause of death was listed as heart failure, but several witnesses say he actually overdosed in a nightclub bathroom and his drug dealers carried his body to his apartment bathtub. However, these claims couldn't be verified without an autopsy. During the siege of Leningrad, the city was blockaded by Nazi Germany for 872 days. Food supplies were so scarce that people resorted to eating wallpaper paste and even boiled leather from furniture. In the worst cases, cannibalism was documented by people digging up corpses and consuming them. Despite this, the city never surrendered, and about 1 million civilians died during the deadly siege. In the year 897, Pope Stephen VI had his dead predecessor, Pope Formosus, dug up, dressed in papal robes, and put on trial simply because the new pope hated him. They propped his decayed corpse on a throne, screamed at it, and found him guilty since he obviously had no defense. Formosus was stripped of his papacy while his corpse had 3 of its fingers cut off before being thrown in a river. The public was horrified by this grotesque trial, as Stephen VI was soon imprisoned and strangled to death. Formosus's body was later recovered from the river, reburied with honors, and his papacy was eventually reinstated by a later pope. In 2016, Star Trek actor Anton Yelchin died in a freak accident at the young age of 27. After pulling into his driveway in his Jeep Grand Cherokee, Yelchin went to check his locked gate for mail when the car suddenly rolled back down the driveway and pinned him against a pillar connected to the gate. It's unknown how long it took for the actor to pass, but he was found dead by friends hours after he failed to arrive at rehearsal, and the official cause of death was blunt traumatic asphyxia. Yelkin's particular car model had a known design flaw that confused drivers about whether it was properly in park, and was later recalled due to faulty gear shifters. If you think you have high cholesterol, this guy will make you feel a lot better, or should I say, a lot butter. A Florida man in his 40s followed an extreme carnivore diet for 8 months, consuming nothing but beef, butter, and cheese. He often ate entire sticks of butter and several pounds of cheese each day, causing his total cholesterol to skyrocket to over 1,000 milligrams per deciliter, while anything over 200 is considered high. As a result, he developed painless yellow cholesterol nodules on his palms, elbows, and the soles of his feet. Despite this, the patient said he felt great following the diet and was able to lose weight while significantly improving his energy levels and mental clarity. A 27-year-old beauty queen from Kosovo has reportedly died after attempting to flee from police. Gülür Erdoğan allegedly tried driving home while drunk until she ran into a police checkpoint. After a breathalyzer recorded her BAC as 3 times the legal limit, she decided to flee from the scene on foot, fearing that her modeling career was over. She ran over to the edge of the overpass and reportedly fell over by accident, plummeting 50 feet onto the 6-lane motorway below before she was fatally struck by a car. In 2012, a woman from South Carolina discovered that her ex-boyfriend of 12 years had been secretly living in her attic for several weeks. She'd been hearing strange noises and nails dropping from the ceiling of her bedroom, before eventually sending her nephew to investigate, who found the man sleeping on the attic's heating unit. The ex-boyfriend had also rigged the ceiling vents to apparently look into the woman's bedroom from above. Upon discovery, he fled the scene before police arrived but was later apprehended. Initially known for her ridiculously large implants, German model and actress Martina says she identifies as black. She's had 23 breast augmentation procedures, as well as numerous perma-tanning treatments to darken her skin, eyebrows, and eye color. The woman says she was baptized as a real African woman while living in Kenya and hopes to build bridges between races. During a camping trip in June of 1969, 6-year-old Dennis Lloyd Martin was last seen hiding behind a bush, planning to jump out and scare his father before he completely vanished. Despite the largest search in Great Smoky Mountains National Park history, no trace of him was ever found. While serial killer Edmund Kemper was serving time in prison, he participated in the Blind Project, a volunteer program where he recorded audiobooks for the visually impaired. Kemper spent over 5,000 hours in the recording booth, as his deep voice was apparently well suited for narration. In 1978, Amos Atkinson held an entire restaurant of 30 people hostage while armed with a shotgun, demanding that his criminal friend be released from prison. But the situation took an unexpected turn when the man's mother stormed the building in her pajamas and hit Atkinson over the head with her handbag while telling him to stop being so stupid. Atkinson then surrendered peacefully. When Pope Pius died, his embalming was so poorly botched that his body began to rot and bloat almost immediately. During the public viewing, his nose fell off, and his body reportedly exploded from the gas buildup inside of the casket due to blistering heat. After being killed in a shootout in 1911, outlaw Elmer McCurdy's embalmed body was mummified and passed around as a carnival sideshow prop for more than 60 years. His corpse was finally identified in 1976, when a TV crew realized that the mannequin was actually a human body. In 2007, a 53-year-old woman died from a stroke, and her organs, both kidneys, lungs, and her liver, were donated to 4 different patients. Over the following months and years, all 4 recipients developed breast cancer, from which 3 of them ended up dying despite treatment. It was later found that the donor had breast cancer that hadn't been discovered at the time of her death. The only survivor had their donated kidney removed early before the cancer could spread. Doctors have said this was an extremely rare case that shouldn't deter anyone from receiving donated organs. In 1963, Frank Sinatra's 19-year-old son Frank Jr. was kidnapped from his hotel room in Lake Tahoe and held for ransom. He was released 2 days later when his father agreed to pay the $240,000, and the 3 perpetrators were captured and arrested soon afterwards. But the kidnapping had a lasting traumatic impact on Frank Sr., who began carrying dimes in his pockets everywhere he went, since the kidnappers demanded all communication be done through payphones, and Frank was concerned that one day he wouldn't have enough change to call them. It became such a habit that the legendary singer was even buried with 10 dimes in his pocket after he died. In January of 1993, Texas attorney David Glenn Lewis planned on watching the Super Bowl alone at home while his wife and daughter were out shopping, but when they returned, there was no sign of him. They found freshly made sandwiches in the fridge, David's laundry in the washing machine, and David's watch and wedding ring on the counter, but no David in sight. The next night, a man was killed in a hit-and-run 1,600 miles away near Yakima, Washington, and 11 years later, the body would be identified as David Glenn Lewis. How David ended up 1,600 miles away so quickly and the circumstances surrounding his death remain total mysteries to this day. Just last year, Nicolas Cage's son Weston was arrested after reportedly assaulting his mother, Christina Fulton. The woman says she rushed to Weston after hearing he set his apartment on fire, but upon her arrival, her furious son snapped, violently pulling her into an elevator by her hair before crushing and suffocating her. Fulton testified, "He shoved his thumb into my eye socket. The pain was excruciating. My vision went black. I was losing consciousness." She credited one of Weston's friends with potentially saving her life by intervening before the attack got too ugly. Weston was recently ordered to complete a 2-year mental health diversion program instead of serving prison time. In 2007, a man named Shannon Wisnant bought a storage unit at an auction in North Carolina, only to find a severed human leg when he opened the grill inside. He reported this to authorities, but soon decided he wanted to keep the leg and turn it into a money-making Halloween display for adults and children to pay to see. However, the man who the limb once belonged to caught wind of the story and said it was his own amputated leg that he lost in a plane crash and wanted to be buried with someday. After a long custody battle, the leg was eventually returned to its original owner. When the 2-year-old daughter of Chelsea Camp was being mauled by a vicious pit bull, the Texas mother had to act fast. She jumped on the dog's back and bit off its ear before shoving her fist down its throat to save her little girl. Both suffered serious wounds from the dog, which belonged to Chelsea's boyfriend and was normally very friendly, but suddenly turned on the toddler. The pit bull was still attacking when police arrived and had to be euthanized. In 2007, a Rhode Island hospital was fined $50,000 and reprimanded by the State Department of Health after brain surgeries were performed on the wrong side of the patient's head 3 separate times in the same year. During the mating process, dogs and other canines get stuck together for anywhere from 5 minutes to an hour. It's a natural physical mechanism called a copulatory tie where both of their genitalia interlock to ensure fertilization. The first time dogs mate, they're often surprised by this and show signs of distress while trying to pull away or run. A man from Vietnam had endured severe headaches for 5 months before finally going to the hospital. After a CT scan, the man and his doctors were shocked to find that a pair of chopsticks were lodged in his skull. It turned out that the man had been involved in a drunken fight 5 months prior that he barely remembered, and somehow ended up with chopsticks deep up his nose as a result. In 1989, 56-year-old Ole Benson laughed so uncontrollably while watching a fish called Wanda that he went into cardiac arrest. His heart rate reportedly spiked to over 300 beats per minute before he died at the movie theater. In 1814, a massive vat at a London brewery suddenly burst, sending 300,000 gallons of beer surging through the streets in a devastating flood. The torrent destroyed homes and claimed the lives of 8 people, including 5 mourners who were attending the wake of a little boy who had drowned just a day prior. One of those victims was the boy's mother, who was still holding her child's coffin when her body was found. A woman undergoing pancreatic surgery was accidentally set on fire after alcohol-based sanitizer met an electrical scalpel. Her body ignited in seconds, and she died from severe burns after doctors tried to put her out with a bucket of water. In 2011, a 16-year-old girl from China had been dealing with chronic headaches for years and finally decided to get them checked out. Doctors were shocked to find a fully formed tumor containing hair, bone, and multiple teeth, likely the remnants of a parasitic twin inside of her skull. It had been pressing against her brain tissue, and the headache stopped upon its removal. Here's a photo of some children who were part of the 1980s Australian cult called The Family. The group was run by Anne Hamilton Byrne, who believed she was Jesus, and illegally adopted 28 children before raising them in total isolation. All were given the surname Hamilton Byrne, the same clothing, and the same haircut and dyed hair color. The kids were imprisoned, routinely drugged with LSD, and brainwashed into believing that Anne was their real mother. They were denied nearly all access to the outside world and subjected to a strict discipline that included starvation diets and frequent beatings. During all of this, the children were told that they were part of a chosen group of superior beings who would survive an impending apocalypse and eventually rebuild and lead the new world. The compound was eventually raided in 1987 after a member escaped and blew the whistle on the cult, but Anne managed to avoid jail time, only paying a measly $5,000 fine due to a lack of concrete evidence.